American launches its World Voices Festival. PEN American has shamefully partnered with the Israeli embassy and taken apartheid money, and in return for that money, it has listed Israel as a champion of World Voices Festival. PEN American is part of PEN International, the worldwide writers association, which promotes the freedom to write and the freedom to read. PEN International was born here in London. We are here today outside the Free Word Centre in Farringdon in London, the headquarters of English PEN, the founding centre of PEN International. We want to respectfully ask English PEN to distance itself from its sister organisation, PEN American, by taking a moral stand and support the Palestinian call for a cultural boycott of Israel. PEN American has ignored the pleas of over 100 writers, including Pulitzer winners Junot Diaz, Richard Ford, and Alice Walker, and award-winning author Louise Erdrich, who have all called on the PEN American Center to reject support from the Embassy of Israel for PEN's annual World Voices Festival. We would like to read a few of the reasons given by these literary figures.
Gillian Slovo, former president of English PEN, 2010 to 2013. She says, I watched how the cultural boycott on South Africa successfully put pressure on ordinary white South Africans to think about what their government was doing in their name. This request for solidarity from Palestinians is more sophisticated than the South African boycott ever was. Instead of censoring individual artists, it asks for a refusal of money from the Israeli state. Let PEN America invite as many Israeli writers as it wants to. Just make sure that the people who pay their fare and their living expenses are not part of a state that systematically breaks international laws.
Malamud Award, 2011 PEN Faulkner Award. She says, 2 questions. Let's say that A is an institution dedicated to protecting the free expression of writers around the world from governments hostile to minority populations and dissenting voices. And let us say that B is a government that is under scrutiny for the increasingly violent and even extrajudicial repression of minority populations and dissenting voices. 1. What might be gained from conspicuously contributing sponsorship to A, and what might A lose by accepting such an endorsement? 2. How long did it take to answer question 1?
Francisco Goldman featured 2016 PEN World Voices participant. He says, I just don't believe PEN, that's the world's most visible and influential organisation that stands for and protects free expression everywhere, should accept money from any state that violently represses human rights, as Israel obviously does. Of course, Israel is far from the only state that does this. If there were a similar letter circulating on Mexico's support for World Voices, I would certainly sign that too. I wish there were such a letter.
Leila Lalami, PEN member 2016 World Voices Festival participant, 2016 PEN Award judge. She says, this is not a boycott of Israeli writers who can travel and attend the world's voice festivals whenever they wish. This is a call on PEN to refuse funding from a government that grants Israeli writers a freedom of movement it denies to Palestinian writers.
Susan Abelhara, PEN member, she said, no matter what language PEN uses to justify taking money from Israel, their actions amount to a willingness to allow a powerful colonial government to corrupt a public US cultural forum in furtherance of an explicit state propaganda campaign. It remains my hope that PEN might still reject funding from Israel's state propaganda budget. Surely there are other means to fund the travel of individual Israeli writers.
Kamila Shamsieh, former Vice President of English Pen, she says, I understand why a call to boycott individual writers would be troubling to PEN members. This is not what we're asking for, and it's not what the wider BDS movement, which springs from Palestinian civil society, asks for. We are asking instead for PEN to refuse sponsorship from the Israeli government. To do otherwise is to become part of the brand Israel strategy, which uses cultural events as a PR tool. Surely, that is not what PEN America and its membership want for their World Voices Festival.
Roddy Judah, 2010 PEN Translation Award winner, past PEN Award judge. She said, it would behove PEN, in keeping with its mission, not only to refuse and return money from a government engaged in occupation and suppression of freedom of expression of the people it occupies, but also to denounce and make public the many instances in which Israel blocks writers, especially of its own citizens, mostly Arab, from publication and book distribution, as well as free travel. If PEN is vociferous and fearless in standing up for the rights of imprisoned and blocked writers in the Arab world, for example, as in the recent cases in Gulf states where worldwide efforts took place in support of such authors, it is then appalling that PEN shirks responsibility from standing up for the rights of Palestinian writers under Israeli occupation and as second-class citizens inside Israel. Does PEN pretend not to have an idea of the restrictions on travel and book availability for Palestinians? Restrictions imposed first and foremost by Israeli government policies. And on top of it all, PEN goes on to accept money from such a government. What collusion, what corruption and whitewashing of PEN's purposes is this? And what shameful silence and concealment! This speaks of the disintegration of PEN's mission, and for PEN to deflect resistance to its behaviour with the falsehood that we, writers, aim to boycott individuals is abhorrent. I demand that PEN come clean and public against this so-called donation, and also to speak more consistently on behalf of the plight of Palestinian writers within Israeli borders and under Israeli occupation in Gaza and the West Bank.
Dr. Ahmed Katamash, Palestinian author and subject of PEN International Alert, when detained without trial by Israeli government. He says, I was imprisoned by Israel for 8.5 years without trial, under administrative detention, as have been thousands of Palestinian detainees, a situation comparable to Franz Kafka's novel, The Trial. Accepting any form of sponsorship from Israel is like PEN America Center endorsing such Israeli policies and supporting the theft of Palestinian land and water, which has left Palestinians with access to only 12% of their ancestral home.
Israel systematically represses Palestinian artists and cultural workers and silences the voices supportive of Palestinian rights. Last November, Israel caged Palestinian journalist Mohammed Al-Qiq indefinitely, without charge and without trial, and with no way to defend himself under Israeli system of administrative detention, which is illegal under the Fourth Geneva Convention. To protest, Mohammed Al-Qiq went on hunger strike. Last month, after 94 days without food and on the verge of death, Israel finally relented and ended his administrative detention order and promised to release him on the 21st of May 2016. At the time, International PEN demanded Israel end the use of administrative detention against journalists, but Israel has instead intensified its attacks on journalists and writers. Today there are around 20 journalists caged by Israel, including some on administrative detention, and 150 bloggers have been arrested because the Israeli occupation doesn't like their Facebook posts. One example is 25-year-old journalist Samar Dwight, who abducted from our home 2 weeks ago on the 10th of April 2016 because the occupation didn't like her Facebook post.
Another example is of Palestinian poet Dareen Tatour. Dareen Tatour was arrested last October and has been caged for 3 months at Israel's infamous rat-infested Hasharon prison. Her crime was to write a poem. Resist, my people. Resist them. Currently, she is under draconian house arrest in an apartment in Tel Aviv with banning orders preventing her from connecting to the internet and communicating with certain people. She has guards and an electronic tagging device attached to her ankle. She is not permitted to return to her home in Reyne. Dareen's poem in classical Arabic starts with the verse, "Resist, my people, resist them. In Jerusalem, I transcended my wounds and I whispered my worries to God, and I carried the soul on my palm in respect of Arabian Palestine." And goes on to draw attention to the violent attacks on her people by the occupation, including the arson attack that killed 18-month-old baby Ali Dawabsha and his parents in Dumma, a village in the occupied West Bank last year. The killing of 18-year-old Hadil Hashlamoun by Israeli soldiers in Hebron, also last year. And the kidnapping and murder of 16 years old Muhammad Abu Khdair in Jerusalem during 2013. Dareen Tatour says, "It is ironic, but not surprising, that I was sent to jail for protesting the killing of my people, whereas actual Israeli killers roam free. Israel's crimes against writers and journalists go unabated. Just 2 days ago, the leader of the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, Omar Nazal, was arrested whilst on his way to an international meeting of the European Federation of Journalists taking place in Sarajevo today, 25th of April, 2016. This is not the time to reward Israel. This is not the time to honor Israel as a champion of anything other than abuses of human rights. We urge PEN, American, to refuse apartheid money and apartheid patronage. And we ask English PEN to distance itself from its sister organization in America by making a moral stand on the right side of history, by declaring open support for the Palestinian call for a cultural boycott of Israel. Already, former President of English PEN, Gillian Slovo, and former Vice President Camila Shamsir, and former board members and trustees have all signed the letter asking PEN to honor this boycott call and refuse sponsorship by the Israeli embassy or any complicit Israeli institution. We ask English PEN to champion the rights of Palestinian writers like Dareen Tatour, Omar Nazal, and Samah Dweik, and all Palestinians suffering under colonial Israeli occupation. Thank you. Free Dareen! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine! Free Dareen!
Let's get it.
They came with their tanks and their planes, with ravaging fiery flames. Nothing remains, just a voice rising up in the smoky haze. We will not go
come on guys, let's support Palestine, let's support the children of Palestine who are being destroyed by nefarious imperialist horror. Are you into sort of nefarious imperialist horror, or do you think that all people and especially children should be looked after and nurtured?